time goes on like we did in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see this project again one way or another. I mean, Leon's not gonna sit there totally like that for the time being. So, if we could just, and, if anybody has any further comments, they have a chance to, write them down. I know Jerry's mentioned some tonight, Joe mentioned some tonight. If anything else you wanna send to Aaron by way of email, so we can just hold off on those.
That will, that will be acceptable. Instead of making the changes at the meeting tonight, we can send them by email to,
To Aaron directly,
okay?
and then just say, please address these concerns in the minutes. And what he will do is, when he sends out the proposed minutes for this September 20th, for the January meeting, we'll have a chance to look them over, and if there's anything at that point in time that we want to add, we can address it right back to Aaron. He can encompass that, and then give us an updated set of minutes for the meeting. Correct, Aaron?
That's exactly right.
That's how we'll do it, yeah.
Okay.
So that way, everybody can say, and then, I mean, obviously, he'll put them on, a piece of paper where he'll save it, so then we can add the continued minutes instead of, comments as we go along. That way, you want the, right, Aaron, you can always keep adding to that draft as we get input from the
Absolutely.
board members.
There's nothing that says that can be part of that. Just eventually, at some point, that,
So, I
the
mean, if
board
we add
as a
comments
whole
to
would
it,
have to
you
vote
can
to
just
approve
vote in on the bottom of the discussion, this was also mentioned. And that way, if you get pieces in, you can just add to that, okay?
We just can't have that discussion via email.
Right.
We can have a discussion, right? We can
Yeah.
send you stuff.
So the main thing is, if you send your comments to Aaron, he puts them in the minutes, shows them to all of us, so it doesn't break the open meeting law where if you communicate with him directly, instead of us all comment back and forth to each other at the same time.
I did have, there is one thing I'd like to bring up now, though, about the minutes. The public hearings, the way that minutes report public hearings, they do a word-for-word transcription of the public notice, beginning with, "The board will hold a public hearing on," and reading that in the minutes makes it sound like the board made a decision that at some future date they'll hold a public hearing on this issue, when in fact the minutes are supposed to report that this is the public hearing and we held this. So I was just thinking, instead of opening that up with the language, "The board will hold a public hearing on," change it to, "The chairman opened a public hearing on." And that way it becomes minutes, it becomes a report on what happened at the meeting.
Just one thing on that issue. I think what you're getting at is that the language in the minutes is basically directly taken from the notice. We don't really alter that. We can change that to make it sound more like it's presented as a part of the introduction to the public hearing. However, I wouldn't say that the chairman opened up the public hearing at that point, because the public hearing doesn't actually open up until later on in the hearing, after the applicant has presented their case, and the public hearing is opened by the chair, at which time the public voices their concerns, approval, whatever. But I would make that comment later on.
And I think when you send the decision to the city clerk, you put all that verbiage in it,
That's correct.
because we get those for review as well.
Yeah.
right?
Yes, the
So that's
decision.
all so that's encompassed. These are for our notes, understanding what took place, but the decision letter encompasses the public hearing notice, everything else that goes to the city clerk, that goes to the applicant, or anybody else for that meeting.
Yeah, there's a
So
fairly
we're covered on
detailed
that part.
timeline in the decision that talks about, that lays that out.
Public hearing was
Correct.
advertised, these 2 dates, boom, 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 you put it all, I know you put it all in there when you get to the city clerk.
I think I know what you're getting at, though, Mr. Boyle. I think what we'll do is we can work on the language a little bit to make it sound more like as it was happening at the meeting. And then later on, we can talk about, the public hearing being opened, at which time we'll list out all the people who speak in favor or against or whatever, like we usually do.
That's like even like, before when we had educational training on this matter, the gentleman says, we don't have to take it for and then against. Tonight, I just stayed with the for, since they already put all the trustees up there, so I figured might as well stay on that line.
Right.
Because we were going that way. He was told, we've been told, just say, anybody who wants to speak on the project. I said, well, since Mr. Elides, who had laryngitis, couldn't speak too much tonight, told us that these people would get up and speak anyways, and then they did, and he already opened up for the public for them. I figured, might as well keep that line of,
Yes, exactly.
instead of stopping it and throwing it, anybody want to jump in, so. So usually in the past, I tried to address it that way, but tonight I think it was easy to continue the flow since it was started, so. So we'll hold off on September 20th. Let's move along to October 1. Anybody have any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 1st, 2012.
Second?
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, those matters are approved. We have November 19th. Any questions on those? Most of them were just the preliminary, we had the one Plain Street rezoning, which I noticed from watching the hearing that the applicant didn't show up until the vote was made.
Yes.
Nice of them to join you, which made it hard for everybody else who was in attendance. And then the rest was the pre-application session, and some of those notes were used for tonight's meeting. And then besides that, it was just a couple of other further comments. Anybody have any questions on the November 19th minutes?
On the November 19th, can I just
Sure.
take a look at that?
Yeah.
The description, Steve had some neighbors from over there on.
Oh, for the zone change that he requested on
Yeah,
Rogers
I
Street.
didn't see a lot of content on what I read, but I just wanted to double check myself.
We didn't include that in the minutes because that really wasn't an agenda item that was
No, it
included
wasn't.
in the public
Okay.
meeting
that's
notice. So that's why it was very, very minimal in our
I
minutes.
think it might come back, though, so it might.
If it's on the agenda, and posted as a part of the agenda, we would provide we certainly, in that context,
That was
provide a
a
lot more
good
detail in
discussion.
that sort of a discussion, but since it was, I think, just introduced as a topic at the meeting, it really wasn't necessarily an official item.
Okay, it wasn't. Okay, that's fine.
Any further questions on November 19th?
I had a couple. First, when we were talking about the school, in the description about the school, the preliminary presentation, the term for the police patrol, you use the word cops, and I have recently found out that cops no longer wish to be called cops. It's
Oh.
now considered a derogatory term.
Cops.
No
Oh.
kidding, the show is called Cops, and yet,
Oh,
they now
yeah.
consider it a derogatory term.
You know what
and
cops
It should be
stand?
changed to officers or
You know
something.
what
Thank
COP
you for
stands
that. We'll make the change. I wasn't aware that was in there.
Constable of Peace.
Oh, really?
Came from England,
Constable of Peace.
with most of our,
Oh, that's
our
interesting.
laws.
I like that.
Yeah,
Thank you. We'll make the change.
yeah.
And-
Constable of Peace, that's what it stands for.
Constable.
COP.
And
Came from England, like most of our laws that we
Yeah,
adopted here in our states.
Constable of Peace.
So the COP, we call it COP. I'm like, well, that's like, if you want to look at other things, how they make reference to the paddy wagon where the Irish take offense to it.
yeah, imagine,
I've heard that a few times in court, believe me. But that came from there too, same location, but.
I also had a couple comments on the Plain Street, the minutes of Plain Street rezoning. I thought it might be just, overall, be better to make those comments, more general. For instance, the comment about the 15-foot width, to turn that into something like, the redevelopment of the property to the dimensional standards of regional retail would be difficult, or some, I'm having trouble here because, Joey, may I borrow yours?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the exact spot
The
right there, matter of
language,
fact.
yeah, in the motion, in the two, the 1 and 2 in the motion. I thought it might be better for us, in case this comes up again, in case there's some sort of a challenge to this, to make to make these references more general so that there's less of a hook to hang things on. Like, instead of identifying specifically the 15-foot setback requirement would make the site difficult, particularly given residential districts abut the property along one side of the rear property line. Redevelopment of the property to the standards of regional retail would be difficult. Instead of specifying what particular standard, making it more general, therefore gives the city a little bit more wiggle room to argue if it needs, in case it needs to.
So I guess my only question is, when the discussion happened, when the discourse was taking place, were those specific requirements mentioned during the discussion
I
or
don't
not?
think that
If
was
they
the
weren't?
sole one that was mentioned. I don't think we only identified the 15-foot setback as the problem.
The only concern I have is how were the motions made? That's the motions, that's not actually the,
Oh, that's listed directly as the motion?
that's the motions.
I-
Well, I'd almost
well-
want to go back to the, right, because it doesn't have to reflect how we
It
can't
does.
change the motion now.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's right. I would suspect that we would have done our best to make sure that the motion actually reflected the actual motion.
Yeah, it's okay, that's true. I didn't think of that. Okay.
Did this go for public hearing to city council yet?
Not yet, no. It actually hasn't even been scheduled as of yet, so.
Oh, something going on with that property.
Yeah, 'cause I know a lot of times we get it, and they say the same date, because it goes to the law department, and then to us, and the two dates are together. A lot of times, by the time we get it, the date's already set.
Yeah, this is not one of those times.
Belvedere thing.
I don't know why.
At the very,
Be the applicant?
right here, other business.
I don't know.
It's just a small,
Yeah, because usually they send it to the law department first, right, Aaron, for approval to look it over, and they send it to us, and the council, and they schedule for a public hearing.
So that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, correct. Usually
get
the
it,
vote
and
is
they-
actually
Legal
drafted.
opinion.
Because usually time we get it is usually a date specific on when they're due back before the council, whichever.
And I noticed under the description of our informal discussion about the proposed Belvedere rezoning, there's, should the minutes at least identify what the discussion was about?
Yeah, that's what I was getting.
Proposal to
I think he could.
propose a rezoning along Rogers Street or something. I mean, reading it, it tells us, Joe Boyle motion and Steve Gendron seconded to instruct DBD staff to prepare a report comparing the current status in terms of the current status of what? As well as the changes that result from a change. There's feedback from the neighborhood, from what neighborhood? I mean, we don't even know what the discussion was about from
I would just strike the whole thing and just go with what it was not an official agenda item.
Right, but we
So
could
why
do,
put anything on there at all?
we could do that, except there was an actual vote that was taken. So if that vote,
the instructions, so, yeah.
you know, if that needs to change, absolutely, we can make sure that the actual motion and the way it was voted reflects exactly what was made with the motion and approved. However, I don't want to add dialogue that didn't exist. So if there's something we're missing in that, absolutely, that couldn't be.
I think what Joe's mentioning is reference to, I mean, there was exact dialogue of Rogers Street, the strip, when you read this, you don't even know.
Right,
There's
okay.
no reference to
Sections,
anything.
you
Yeah.
have
We
no
could,
idea
we
what
could
we're
add
talking-
reference points to that.
Yeah, This could have been the acre, Centerville, you have no
They
idea.
talked about how they spoke with you about creating a whole new zone, matter of fact.
Correct.
I don't even,
They did,
in
right?
detail.
They said, we speak about Aaron about creating a new zone for the city of
Yeah.
Lowell for this strip.
And just,
Are you aware of that?
I was not aware of that, no, I
That's
did
what came out
not.
of the discussion when I watched it, right?
And I'm
Instead
sure,
of just making it one or the other, they were gonna create a whole new one.
Right.
I'm sure the board is
Not
aware of any time that a neighborhood group or a group of neighborhood residents are petitioning a rezone, that the petition actually goes to the city council first, instead of the planning board. The public doesn't petition the planning board to initiate a rezone, or a zoning amendment. So if there were a number of residents there to move that forward, that should have been submitted to the clerk, for an official review.
What could happen is the
But there
discussion
were
came
not-
up that two ways to do it. The neighborhood could bring it forward, or by a vote of a planning board.
Right.
I wasn't here, but I watched it on
Right,
TV,
yeah,
that's how.
Yes,
it
the-
was.
Right. I remember now, yeah.
The
Because
planning
Steve brought
board
it.
can, but not on behalf
They
of
vote, or they could
Right.
bring it
a
back.
petition, a neighborhood group by petition.
Right. They
If it's
said
initiated by the
they
plan,
said Either the neighborhood can petition the council, or the planning board can request the council,
Right.
right?
And what we,
Right,
what
isn't
we,
that what discussion was?
that's actually correct. And what we determined is that, I think, as a matter of fact, and we've all recognized, to put words in anybody's mouth, but that it's a unique strip of road that needs to be addressed with projects that we had come before us.
Main thing was Taco Bell's, what these people referred to, and how they get a hold of Steve, and that's what triggered it, right?
Exactly, and then the idea was, I think, as a planning board, we felt that that needs to be looked at. And then I think Joe brought up some good points as far as, I mean, there's also, there's businesses around there as well.
Right.
And that's what we said, look, we need to have a more in-depth look at this and ask for DPD to
So-
provide.
what I can say about that is the conversation I had with the neighborhood group, post the Taco Bell project, which kind of, where this, as you noted, germinated from, was that out of the master plan update process, we had heard a similar concern from, the regional retail district on Middlesex Street,
Sure.
where the school was proposed for tonight. And so what I had suggested at the time, and I think you'll find actually in the master plan update, one of the recommendation is to take another look at a handful of the strip commercial centers that we have that are in a regional retail district, one of them being Route 38, and the other one being a stretch of Middlesex Street, and taking a look at them from a zoning perspective and to determine whether or not regional retail is the right district for them. Should there be something that's in between a regional retail district and, say, a traditional mixed-use district? Something that, kind of provides a better gap between those two, because it's a fairly bright line right now in our zoning code. You have a regional retail that's really about auto-centric commercial that serves the region. Then you have traditional mixed use, which is really about pedestrian-oriented commercial district that allows residential as a component to that. So, yes, you'll see in the master plan update that's part of one of the zoning solutions or recommendations that we want to look at in the future. However, that was after the master plan was updated, and we got some direction as to what are the priorities as far as zoning amendments. If this is one of them, that's something we can certainly look at, and I think it would include the analysis that I think you were looking for. Is what is the situation now from a zoning perspective? What does that mean? And what is the next closest option, which would be traditional mixed use? And does that serve the purposes of that corridor? Or is there a new district that better reflects that corridor and its needs?
What came up that night was also the idea, it was also neighborhood business, NBD. Was also rezoning a chunk of the regional retail to NBD.
Neighborhood business, well, that is another option. It's even more, if you have a scale, if you have a transect, I guess, if you go from regional retail, you have regional retail on this end, which is auto-centric. You have neighborhood business district on this end, which is pedestrian-oriented commercial district. Traditional mixed use is somewhere in between, maybe a little bit more this way, towards the neighborhood business district.
Really?
Maybe there's another one, what we're suggesting is maybe there's another one that is a better transition from the regional retail to a traditional mixed use, or even a neighborhood business district, because I believe there is an MB, the small neighborhood business district over there.
We were thinking that that spectrum would go regional retail, neighborhood business, traditional mixed use. With the thinking being TMU is a little more residential friendly, and regional retail is no residential at all, and NBD is residential by special permit. And so going along that, and not just allowing residential, but also the level of protection that it provides to nearby residential. Regional retail provides the least. TMU would provide the most, whereas retail is a special permit in TMU, and NBD provides some more protection for abutting residential. And so in that sense, it was in between the two.
So as far as uses, yes, there's a closer line drawn between regional retail and neighborhood business district, because they are intended to be commercial districts. However, the setback requirements and the parking requirements in the traditional mixed use is more aligned with the regional retail. Neighborhood business district has a 0 lot line, or allows a 0 lot line, and a maximum 8-foot setback from the street. TMU is more relaxed for commercial businesses. So you have a requirement in the neighborhood business district where things are pushed to the street in a pedestrian-oriented manner. Parking is usually set in the back. In the TMU district, there is some provision for commercial buildings set back a little bit farther from the street, which would allow parking in front if that's appropriate for the site. So in that sense, I guess that's where I'm coming from that along that continuum, where does that fit? Obviously, they're both kind of commingling across when it comes to the performance standards, the design standards, and the use standards between the two. That's why we're looking at it and making a recommendation that there's perhaps another district that better fits this area.
But back to the minutes.
Did not mean to get into this discussion.
If we could reference, I think, that corridor in which the context of that discussion took place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just enough so someone who can reading the minutes will know what we were talking about.
Right, exactly.
Also, Aaron, getting back to your point about where zoning amendments come from, we discussed at that meeting the possibility that, yes, the planning board might consider sponsoring a zoning amendment, being the initiator of a zoning amendment. I think that there was, I think Mr. Gendron was fairly ready to go in that direction, until we had the discussion, decided that this needed more, that this needed to be looked at a lot longer. I think it's still a possibility that we might want to sponsor a zoning amendment. Obviously, we would want a great deal of assistance and input and discussion from the professional planning staff before we do such a thing. And certainly the neighborhood activists from Belvedere who came up with a zoning proposal for a commercial district without discussing it with any commercial property owners or business owners, could go forward on their own and drop their own zoning amendment and bring it to the city council, that an amendment coming out of the planning board with the input of the staff, of the professional planning staff, would be more likely to have a little more nuance and potentially be a better zoning amendment than one coming out of, going directly from the Belvedere Neighborhood Group to the city council. That's why we requested help from the staff for the possibility of drawing up our own zoning amendment.
I personally don't buy that idea. I don't think the city council is gonna make a difference if it comes from us or the neighborhood. mean,
I
that's
can't
past
speak for the
experience
city
of
council
Working with the
either.
council and zoning changes. The problem I see with the planning board sponsoring it, I think we lose our objectivity when it comes to the public hearing.
You would.
It does change the
Sit there and
dynamic.
say, you can come and say everything you want to me, but I'm gonna sit here and shake my head at you, and it's gonna be a charade.
Well,
I think we lose that. Because a lot of times at these public hearings, and tonight, for example, I mean, I know we don't make up my mind until we come in here, but a lot of things come up at a point you say, wow, we never heard of that, never thought about this. Now, these neighbors find out about something, they come down, planning board's sponsoring this public hearing, I'm gonna conduct a public hearing against these people where I'm saying, this is what we're asking for, and this is what we want, and I'm gonna listen to you to try to change my mind. I don't think it's given the people in opposition a fair shot at the public hearing.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we wouldn't, certainly hope that the planning board would not produce and sponsor a zoning amendment without prior getting that input from the neighborhood.
You're not gonna get them all to get the public hearing.
Yeah, if I may, I agree. I think that it does present a challenge for sure. And the one way to deal with that, and I'll go back to, I guess how I started this, is if the planning board were to put forth a zoning amendment, in any event, basing it on a master plan or a recommendation from a master plan gives it some more of that weight that you're talking about, that this was developed out of a public process. Now, we didn't get into the details in the master plan update, but we do understand, based on feedback from folks, that there are certain or commercial districts that may not be zoned correctly, and this is one of them. So we, at the very least, the planning board knows through that process that there's an issue. There's perhaps zoning districts that need to be reworked to better reflect the character of those neighborhoods, to better serve the purpose of those districts. At that point, the planning board can recommend or petition the city council to rezone a certain area without coming up with the details. The city council then could kick it then to the zoning subcommittee, where a process might be worked out through DPD, if they decide where we actually go out and, either it's a visioning session or a charrette, work with the people who live and work and own businesses along those corridors to determine what are the needs, what are the appropriate steps forward in rezoning, to then develop those standards, which would then come back to the planning board for for a review and recommendation. However, that provides a little less control over the final requirements. So, but there's no perfect answer there. There's no one perfect way. It's either base it on a master plan, kick it to the city council to give the planning department direction on how to move forward, or develop some more detailed recommendations or detailed amendment for the council's consideration.
I think some of the other problem you get into is if we start sponsoring neighborhood zoning changes, where's it start and end? I mean, another neighborhood comes forward and says, come on, you did it for Belvedere, can you do it for the Highlands? What, you ruling me out for some reason? What, you don't live in my neighborhood?
Again, I agree, any amendment, or request for an amendment or petition that is derived from a neighborhood group or residents in the neighborhood should go directly to the city council for that reason.
I mean, obviously, we can give many support, if we say, we have our input, we have our vote, and I think it's delicate for us to sponsor one particularly.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, as you say, in the master plan, if we address it, when we looked at all the zoning, I mean, Jerry can speak at length the amount of time he put in to request his zoning, and this is the reason. We're having a follow-up on the master plan coming into us. If that's something that we can propose at the master plan, I think that's a more appropriate way to funnel that in appropriately, instead of,
may be a way to do
individually
it.
picking which neighborhood group we want to sponsor on their behalf and doing their legwork. I mean, no disrespect to that, but I think we get to the point of where does the board pick and choose where they back neighborhood plans and don't? And I think by doing that, we're walking a slippery slope in regards to what the perception is from the neighbors, whether we bother to sponsor them or not. Because we really don't have a history of doing that.
And that is a
No history.
part of why my recommendation was to ask planning staff to issue a report, because I did not want us to be sponsoring a
Yeah.
plan from the neighborhood.
Yeah, more
I wanted us
check,
to be possibly sponsoring a plan from the planning
Yeah.
staff
Right.
and adopting it as our zoning amendment, not simply taking a request from the neighborhood and putting our stamp on it, but rather making it, deciding whether we wanted to sponsor a plan that was
Oh.
ours.
Well, could I just offer, I mean, I think it came to us, I think what Joe was saying is correct, but our vote was to direct it to DPD, and rather than having it come back to us for sponsor, we've looked at it, recognized that something needs to be looked at, to DPD to study that, and then based on what you find, then you would craft, if you felt there was a need for a rezone, that would be presented to the city council for them to send to the planning board for
Review, yeah.
recommendation.
Well, anytime that there's a DPD, whenever the planning department's involved in crafting an amendment, it's at the direction of either the city manager or the city council, or through the
That would
city
have to be
manager.
brought to a city council to then
Right,
direct it back to
Right,
DPD.
so if we're gonna draft language, it would be had out of a policy, an actual policy statement. That's, I think, where the master plan comes in. That the the city manager can then, through the director of DPD, direct staff time to create new policy recommendations, new zoning amendments that could then be adopted by the city council. It needs to come from the manager's office, basically. What I can do maybe for the January 7th meeting is provide maybe an outline of what the best options for rezoning this district is. I think it's either that, as we discussed, if the residents want to move forward quickly on
Yeah, I
this,
think
that's option.
I think the residents
other-
deserve that clear direction as to where they're going.
Absolutely, yep.
Definitely do.
Yep, and I can understand
they
that,
reached out for
I
help
can
saying no.
understand not wanting to wait, because if it's gonna come out of the master plan update, it's gonna take a year.
Yeah.
I think as Joe pointed out, maybe there's a better zone proposed for that area than what they were thinking about.
Right.
And with the help of people,
the experts.
you can say, we can accomplish what you want, but maybe we can accomplish in a better way by putting it in this zone instead of that zone.
Yeah, right.
But accomplish the same thing.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
On another note, we're speaking about zoning, We did accomplish that on Swan Street and Bigelow.
I was going to bring that up.
See, it went before the council, they
Where are
withdrew it and wanted us to look at the whole area.
Correct.
Right,
Because I called there and said, what happened on that? I didn't see it on the council.
Yeah, where are we with that?
So.
Come back again before us.
Yeah, the long and the short is the petitioner withdrew their request because if the city council denied it, they'd have to wait 2 years before submitting an
They could bring
additional
it back,
petition.
right.
So we withdrew it with understanding that they would either submit a petition for the entire TSF district that basically is Bigelow Street, as well as the Swan Street property to SSF district, which was recommended by the planning board. One of the councilors beat them to the punch and then made a motion for that exact thing, to direct DPD to work with the law department to develop the vote, which is in fact what is underway right now. So that's yeah, and that's a good example of how it can work, to
It was actually
address
kinda gotta
concerns
have
and
that
conditions. I think that's a great example, as a matter of
I mean,
fact.
Attorney Plunkett, like I say, being chairman of the planning board in Tewksbury for many years, he knows land use, he heard the concerns and he's addressing them, and, we're gonna see this over and over again. It's sort of like the other piece of zoning we just had up Westview Road. These projects aren't going away. They're coming back in one way or another. So our bottom line is what's the best use for the project. And I was glad to hear when you told me that on how the applicant was looking at it and how they addressed it, because I think even that night, he wanted to put a stipulation on how big the lots would be.
The conditional rezone.
Yeah, so I mean, so with the V-zone, it's, either way, which would go in, so that'll be beneficial hopefully, so I know we'll be seeing that again too as well.
Does that make sense to the board? Maybe for the January 7th meeting, what I'll do is put together
Send
a
us something
more
together.
formal
Yeah.
response and, maybe give some more direction moving forward. If
Right. Just say,
if the
by
planning, if you
reviewing
choose
this,
to request that, the planning and development work with the residential group, the commercial district, we can do that, but, I'll put together a series of options.
What type of zoning we feel could meet their needs and why.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you, Aaron. On that, let's move it along. Notices from abutting towns, we can place those on file if there's no objections. I don't think I've seen any in my plan. And I think we did have some, do we have ZBA notices? I got a copy of a plan today. Did anybody else get a copy of the ZBA notices?
I've got them in front of me.
I did not know.
I got one late this afternoon.
oh, I didn't.
They have one continuance, which doesn't affect us, on 685 Lawrence Street, which was a special permit to convert vacant warehouse space into personal training facility. So I think we already gave a recommendation on that one.
Yeah, we have a recommendation. The only new item that really, I don't think the planning board would have much interest in is 22 Shattuck Street.
Right, because the other one is Middlesex Street, which we didn't take up tonight because that was continued. So the other one is 22 Shattuck Street to convert an existing art supply store connected to a two-story professional building into one residential unit. Do you have any feedback on that, Aaron?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot here to provide feedback on. I think you're all familiar with the art supply store on Middle Street. They're really relocating, and the petitioner is seeking to return that. Van Gogh, thank you, Van Gogh gear. The petitioner is looking to turn that into a residential unit, a single residential unit. And the downtown mixed-use district doesn't allow one or two residential structures in the district at all. The one difference in this case is that it's attached to a commercial structure. It's with the law firm.
Mixed-use property.
It's a mixed-use property, which is a special permit. It's a use special permit through the zoning board of appeals. The department, we didn't have any real issues with the request. It's a very small piece of frontage in Middlesex Street. We typically don't like to see residential on the ground floor in the downtown mixed-use district, but it's a pretty unique property, as you know.
Yes.
It has a very residential feel to it already, that part of the building does. And it's a very, like I said, it's a very narrow presentation to the street, should I say. So I wouldn't feel, our feeling is that it doesn't negatively impact the activity that you're looking for in a commercial street that you want. So we didn't really have any issues with the proposal as it was presented.
I would say that actually fits the criteria of there being issues involving the shape and dimensions of the land affecting that property in particular and not the district in general. That's a very unique setup that's found nowhere else in the downtown, where you've got that little projection off the back attached to the building.
Yeah.
That is unique to that property, which does not affect the district generally.
They're not seeking a variance, but I think what you're saying, it is a,
For a special permit? Yeah.
it's a special permit, but no, it's all right, I don't mean to, it's a good point, and I think that's the point I was trying to make too, is that it's a unique property to downtown mixed-use district, whereas it's not a problem for us, from our perspective, to have residential on the ground floor. It's not gonna have that impact on the street activity.
When I brought up before the issue of what we should be doing when we give these issues to the zoning board, I don't think that it really provides a lot of value for us to tell the zoning board, hey, that drive lane's pretty tight, you know, you might want to take a look at that. I think the zoning board's perfectly capable of figuring that out for themselves. But this question here, this is an actual issue of the city's plan for its redevelopment and what is an appropriate strategy and what is not. And this is the type of thing that we should be providing feedback to the zoning board on. Not telling them, careful, that parking lot, make sure that parking space isn't too tight, you know? So I would actually recommend giving issuing a recommendation on this one, and possibly even a recommendation saying that this is consistent with and would promote the goals of the city's comprehensive plan. And that this is the type of recommendation we should give it to the zoning board.
Motion's made, discussion? If not, second?
Second.
Motion's made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, recommend approval, okay. Moving along, do we have any other general comments from any of the board members or from DPD? Aaron, anything further for us?
Yeah, you're right. The only other thing is, I don't think we caught a vote for the October 1st meeting no, I'm sorry. November 19th meeting minutes. Was there a motion to approve that,
Oh, yeah.
based on the amendments?
Did we want to approve the 19th as amended, or?
I think based on some of the amendments, I prefer to see the amended
Okay.
minutes before we approve it, but yeah.
Anything further, not from Aaron, anything further from any of the board members?
One quick
Sure,
thing.
Mr. Lockhart?
Quickly, I just think it's important to note that the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Tanner Street redevelopment met recently. And I'll have more to say on it when there's more time. It's, you know, the consulting firm is refining some light industrial development over there that's quite interesting, has a great potential, so I'll just hold that.
Any other board members? No. The only thing I'd add is I see where the city manager has appointed an alternative board member to go before the council tomorrow night for approval.
Oh.
Bob Malovich, was Bob here?
Malovich,
I
really?
used to work with Bob, I
No, you
remember his
didn't.
retirement party.
Oh, wow.
That's who they appointed for, that's going before the council for tomorrow night for approval
yeah.
for our alternate.
Our alternate? Wow.
And what I
Couldn't
did,
ask for a better.
what I did do is I
Great.
jumped on Aaron today and I said, could you give me a copy of that? And then I asked Aaron, could you send me his resume? And Aaron goes, oh, you didn't get that? And I said, no.
Quite the resume.
So I said, so I was looking at Jerry said, I didn't get that. I said, well, I had to ask,
A
so.
man who drew up Lowell's first
So it has in here, and I'm saying,
HUD 1.
because I say, and I said, I remember working with him over the years, and when he retired, and I have the copy of it, if anybody wants a copy of it, but, so that's up for tomorrow night. It's on tomorrow night's agenda that we received this afternoon from Aaron from the council, if you saw it, it was in there somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets appointed and it comes on as our alternate, which would be for our January meeting.
That's correct.
Right.
A full complement.
Yeah. So that's the only general communication I had, so. Hearing that, entertain a motion to adjourn? Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Good night, we are adjourned, thank you.